It is actually Saturday, the 18th of March, for your Friday edition. We were actually quite tied up in business yesterday and just wasn't in the cars to do the Friday video blog, so you get a day's release from that. And unfortunately, that also gives me a little bit longer time to prepare for let's call it a special. Let's get started. If you like this content, please go to calldale2sell.com, find the tab that says on YouTube, click it, and it'll open up a page of QR codes. There you can use a smartphone to scan and get to the YouTube page, or you can just mouse over and click it on a PC. There you'll be able to subscribe to this little button over here and click the notification bell so that YouTube will notify you when each Friday's blog has been uploaded. Thank you. Well, now we got all that out of the way. Let's look at some of these tabs I have pulled up today. And as always, I'll give you the links to the tabs, or in some cases, there is Google searches, so I figure you can handle that yourself. I'll give you the Google link in there. However, let's look at some of the information that we have to go over, and we'll look at it pulled up here with this first one. Now, this first article is from Mortgage News Daily. It was datelined yesterday. I pulled it up March 17th. Mr. Matthew Graham, he is one of the people that is knowledgeable on all things mortgage financing industry related, bonds and whatnot. And he gives us quite a long, lengthy explanation of the Fed rates will still raise rates in March, and that's why rates may keep falling. Now, of course, he put a may in there because nobody really knows, and he goes through a long list of his explanation of why the Fed's increasing the target rate is going to actually reduce the mortgage rates that the mortgage-backed securities eventually get tied to when they sell these things off. I will leave this long article for you to digest and to make sense of. He has nice little colored charts in here, so you know he must know what he's talking about. But it is his business. That's what he does. And he talks about a flight to safety. Now, I will point out something that is more disturbing that we've talked about in the past episodes of these Friday blogs. We'll see that the 2-year Treasury, this happens to be, I think, what is this? Is this the 2-year or 1 year? Let me roll up to the top. I have it pulled up. 2-year Treasury rates. That's a short term. Usually when people use the 2-year, they're just trying to park some money for a very short period of time. We use the 10-year often to kind of look as a indicator, a suggest perhaps of why mortgage rates may be what they are, because most people don't hold their mortgage for 30 years, even if they get a 30-year note. So we often look at where the 10-year Treasury is. And I'm looking at Y charts, and I'm pulling this up today, 3.81% for March 17 of 2023. But what I do want to show you here is this spike that we saw. This is not going in the right direction. It actually hit 5%, which is quite high for a 2-year Treasury note. And you see the history of this. What does it look like all through 2021, 20? Because the economy was going good, people weren't buying these things too much, and now we have to increase the rate to get people to buy them. And this is a holding place to put your money versus trying to hold it in real estate or something else. This, I take, is a sign of something that nobody is really giving much credence to. They don't talk about what the 2-year is doing, why all of a sudden we've started during this inflationary period of trying to hold our money as best we can at, say, 5%. And we hit 5%. That has come down since, but it did hit that. Now, here's a story that we're getting into. How many of you have heard of the bank failures and all of the different stuff that's going back and forth, the disinformation, the false information, the stuff that's hard to believe that comes out anyway? And we find out that a Silicon Valley, which is in California, a California bank failed. Apparently it was mismanaged, and they didn't even have, according to one report, a risk manager, but they had something to deal with social policy. And I guess social policy, if you're a bank in California, may be a necessary office to have, but I still think they should probably have had their business of money taken care of higher priority over other things. And we do have bank failures. You can pull this one up, USA Today. How often do U.S. banks collapse? They have a few every year. We don't normally have a lot of them, but the Silicon Valley Bank is a rather large one, I am told. Now let's look at one other thing. We talked about the CPI, Bureau of Labor Statistics. And we see that this comes from the government. And we remember that January, they redefined how they were going to calculate inflation. And this is what most of us look at, because this is the consumer price index. We also have a producer's price index, which is the wholesale. And what this is for, I'll bring this up for you, is we're still having about 9.5, almost 10% increase on food. All items are still 6%. It's not good. And it was the inflation that was pushing the Fed to change the target rate. And macroeconomics simply teaches us that the cure for a high economy is to kill the economy off. The inflation comes from a high functioning economy. Things are going really well. And so to kill inflation off, we have to kill the economy off. We have to put it in recession. And for whatever reason, our chairman of the central bank, who says he doesn't really understand how inflation works, back when they printed all the money in the money supply that started all this, why is he the Fed chair if he doesn't understand this? And why is he pushing the rate up and fearful of recession when it's actually the recession that corrects the inflation? That's how we get inflation down, is by going into a recession. So to me, it almost seems like he's doing absolutely nothing for inflation because he hasn't pushed rates up high enough, fast enough. Remember, they were several months delayed, about 6 months delayed before he did anything, as they were trying to be in denial. Of course, we had an election, a midterm election coming up. I wonder what's going to happen this year with another election coming up pretty soon. So all we know is what you know, that the price of everything is going up. It doesn't seem to be curbing off anytime fast, and we need a recession to fix that. And yet, because everyone associates the word recession with something that's very bad, we're not going into it. So we're just like, in my mind, we're just sticking Band-Aids on a wound, on a mortal wound. It's not going to do us much good. And as high as interest rates have gone, it's really hurt the housing industry. Inflation's hurting us even more. It happens that the Fed typically uses this thing, the PCE, which is not the CPI. And here I bring up a chart from Trading Economics, and we can go up to the top. It says the personal consumption expenditure or price index in the United States rose by 5.4 year on year in January, accelerating from an upwardly revised, see, they revised up, not down, unfortunately, 5.3% rise in the previous month. They like to come out with a number that's actually better than expected or lower than expected, and then when nobody's looking, then revise it backwards to where it truly might actually be. It's just a different index, and that's what apparently the Fed uses, is the PCE, not the CPI. CPI is something they sell to us to tell us what's going on. But we're going to look at this chart, and we see that we've been bebopping around here below 2%, and what does Chairman say he wants inflation to be measured at? At about 2% or below. And yet here we are. We jumped up to about 7%, and now we're above 5, less than 6, and we're trending back up. Well, let's talk about that period where we corrected the last time we had a major crisis. Let's pull this up, and we see it was around 2008. What happened to inflation in 2008 when the economy kind of collapsed and we weren't going great guns? Well, we see that inflation went down below zero, actually, because of the depth of that event. So how do you cure inflation? You cure it with a recession. I don't see that we're going to cure this big spike without a recession. And I just would have rather, a year ago when it started, that we went into a recession then and got it over with, as to do what they've done with the rates, with the Fed rates. And if we go back to that original article, the Fed will still raise rates in March. So how are we making progress? I don't know. But I know this, as long as inflation is going up, we're going to see higher prices on things, and things go into houses, and the houses are built with things, and property is bought with money that is being depreciated, and I think that things are going to continue to go up in price. So you can wait if you like, but we're going to see the big inventory. What we're going to see in inventory rise is going to happen pretty quick. It's March, April, May, right in through those periods when we start to see that trend upwards, and we're seeing some of that. You really, if you're looking to buy or sell your house, I think today is about as good a time as we're going to have coming up in the near future, because we do have, again, the federal central bank is going to raise the cost of money, and that's going to make loans more expensive. Again, we had that story from Mr. Matthew Graham that says he thinks as the Fed rate goes up, the rates are going to fall. Now, if you take them on total, it doesn't work that way. It may work maybe in a short term, but we hear conversations being had in the media that, because the banks failed, we're going to somehow drop the rise in interest rates that we're using to combat the inflation that affects the entire economy. instead of just the banks. Now, I don't want banks to fail, but if a couple of banks fail nationwide, I don't know that coming off of this fix he has for inflation makes any sense to me at all. In fact, it looks to me like he hasn't moved the rates high enough fast enough. I know that sounds terrible coming out of somebody in his Saturday get up for his Friday show, but it just doesn't make sense to me. What does make sense to me, that if you're looking for a home, you're looking to sell your home or get a new one, that rates are probably going to continue to go back up overall. And I cannot presume to understand every facet of our macroeconomic world, but I do understand that the Fed raising the cost of money is generally associated with higher mortgage rates. So if he's not going to come off of that, and if inflation is not coming down, I don't see what we can do to fix it other than maybe opening up the cost of living increases that are caused by the energy policy that we have. And I see that recently, as a matter of fact, this week, the president was saying he's going to open up some new drilling. That's going to take years for us to actually get oil off of it, but it's going to be up in some government land, and part of his constituency is up in arms raising teetotal cane. But we have true inflation, which is the money watering down, the money supply issue, and then we have the cost of living, which is the cost of energy and everything else that goes into it. So he's got the double whammy going, and I don't see the chairman of the Fed stopping raising rates. In fact, I would say we do still have a chance to go back up to a half a point or 50 basis points. Maybe not. Maybe the bank failures will scare him off of that. But 25 points is not getting it. We're still seeing inflation on food almost 10%. So what do? You bury your head in the sand and you stay where you are and maybe get locked into place? Or do you go ahead and move now? Do you market your home that you've got and move to a new one where you want to be for the next 5, 10, 12, 15 years? Or do you just gamble and think, well, I think it's going to miracle us into some better economy in the very near future, and I'll move then? It's your choice. Do you want to get locked into place, or do you want to move now? So you know what we got to do? We got to wrap this show up, and we'll get the weekly numbers. They'll be a day late, but we'll get those numbers. Hello, I'm Del Delbert of Benchmark Realty, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. If you are currently unrepresented and would like to know how to compare up to 3 properties side by side and room by room, then go over to my new YouTube channel. Call Del to sell. That's 1 L and Del, no spaces. Watch the demo on Real Scout, and then call me, and we'll set up your exclusive ad-free account today. Last week of the 10th, we had 15,819 opportunities. That was up over the previous period. We had 3,876 in the under contract still showing. That was up over the previous period. And we had a ratio between the two of 25%. This week of the 17th, we had today 15,864 in the opportunities. That's up over the previous period, but just barely. 3,955 in the under contract still showing. That is also up just a little bit, not enough to worry about. And the ratio remained the same at 25%. So that's today's numbers. Anyway, no one knows what the future holds or what the Fed chair will say this week, but we'll find out soon enough. And remember, we're coming into the green season, so this is the time of the year you want to put that house on the market, or you want to look to buy. Your opportunities probably will not be any better than they are coming up. Thank you and have a great day.